persistence persistence is absolutely necessary if you're going to walk the path. Meaning that no matter what happens as you walk, no matter what happens as you practice, right? You use that as fodder. You use that. You know, when you're walking the path, one of the things that will happen is you will experience, if you get down the road a bit, one of the things you'll experience is there are upsets or there are challenges that don't bother you anymore, right? You know, if you get to the point where you can be the witness and witness the thinking, there are things that happen, circumstances and situations that happen that you will notice don't bother you anymore. You don't get affected anymore. You know, a lot of times that happens in relationships, you know, where you stop being crazy in the relationship and calm down and start to actually experience what's available in the relationship instead of, you know, being right about everything or being in control all the time. And this is the thing that has to be gotten. You have to be clear that although you continue to fall into the idea, you continue to fall into the thought process and the idea that you're a physical body and you're a personality, that will continue to play in your head, right? But that's not true. That's not real. And what is true and what is real is that the experiencer of the thinking is real. The awareness of the thinking is real. The thinking itself is a mechanical process that the brain does. But we have all identified ourselves with that mechanical process that the brain does, and we have accepted what the thoughts are saying as being the truth. And they're not true. They're not true.
We've been brainwashed.
Yes. You have been brainwashed. But the brainwash that we've been brainwashed is necessary. It wasn't nefarious, it was necessary. If you didn't get brainwashed, you wouldn't be able to be in the world, right? In order to be in the world, you have to play this game in which this is my piece and I am this person. That's necessary to be in the world, right? But that's not the last step. There's another step, and that is to wake up and remember the truth that you are the awareness and you're acting like a person, but you're not really a person. Before you become accept yourself, you were always, in eternity, you were always awareness. And the awareness that you were is the same as all awarenesses that everybody's experiencing. There's no separation, you see, there's no separation. Before there's a separate self, there's no separate self. And if there's no separate self, what is there? There's just awareness. There's just awareness, and it's eternal. It doesn't happen in time. It doesn't happen in time. This is the discovery. This is what the realization is. This is what walking the path is about. Walking the path is about, once you get that you're the awareness of thinking, and you're the awareness of the body, and you're the awareness of emotions, you're the experiencer of that, right? You're actually the experience of that. You could call it the experiencer of that, right? Once you get that, then it's possible to walk the path. What do I mean? It means that you can begin to live your life in such a way where you're watching your life happen instead of being the character that you're playing in this drama. You're watching it happen instead of being the character that you're playing in the world. You'll still be that character in the world, right? But you don't identify yourself as it in terms of being limited by that identity anymore. You start to experience your true nature, which is unlimited. And because it's unlimited, it can provide for you what you've been trying to get out of the person that you can't get. You've been trying to get out of the person happiness, peace, satisfaction, well-being, and clarity, haven't you? Yeah. And when you surrender, when you let go of the thought, identifying with thought, and you surrender to what's happening, right? Then what becomes available is called the grace of God. What becomes available is the experience of well-being, the experience of the satisfaction, peace, happiness, and clarity. What my teacher described it last night when he was talking about it, he said there's an experience of being relaxed and at ease and clear, like that. And when you're walking the path, you will have this experience happen. When I hear the geese, to me, that's something that has me stop and get my true nature. Stop and look at the geese and realize, that this is one of the wonders of the experience of being awake, is to see things as they are. The beauty and the wonder of these birds flying in the sky. When you're in a personality, you're busy getting into your car. You're busy worrying about how much money's in your pocket. You're busy worrying about whether you're going to get to where you're going on time. And the geese can fly all day and you don't notice it. But when you're awake and the geese fly, it's like you stop and you look, right? And you experience a relationship with reality. You experience a relationship with reality, and you know that you and the geese are the same. What you're aware of and what you're experiencing and the experience are the same. You're experiencing life, right? But the next step is to see if you can get that you are life. You're not experiencing life, you are life. The experience you're having is life, isn't it? Yeah, the experience you're having is life happening. That's why they say in the Advaita Vedanta teachings, right? Have you ever heard of that? In the Advaita Vedanta teachings, that famous saying that they always quote, right? Does anybody remember it? Sat, Chit, Ananda. Right? It means, Sat means exist. Now, and that statement is meant to be the truth. I exist as consciousness, and when I exist and I exist as consciousness, I have happiness, I have bliss, I have fulfillment, I have peace of mind, I have clarity. So that's a one-line teaching. What am I? I exist, I am consciousness, and I am happy. Okay? See, that's real, that's reality. You could say that these practices and teachings are about making contact with reality. Because the personality can't make contact with reality, can only make contact with thinking. It can't make contact because it doesn't exist. It's not aware, it's not conscious, it's not real, it's not alive. It can't make contact with anything. It can only make contact with thoughts, right? And so it lives in the world of thinking, isn't it true? Your personality lives in the world of thinking. As you go through your life, right? There's a direct relationship with the thinking activity all the time. It's what drives people mad, right? It's what makes people angry. It's what causes depression. It's what causes anxiety. Right? It's what causes confusion. It's what causes intolerance. All the things that we suffer from are being generated in the thought process. And so what we're doing is we're practicing moving attention away from that activity. And when we move attention away from that activity, the possibility and the probability of experiencing the truth becomes greater because there's not as much noise, there's not as much activity. That's why the way my teacher talks about this is he says, we gotta calm down. If you can get relaxed enough and calm enough, right, that you can see clearly instead of think, right, that you're using seeing instead of thinking, right, then you can't miss the truth because the truth is always available. It's always there, right? And so you have to be patient, you have to be persistent, you have to be diligent, you have to practice formally until you have enough of an awakeness. You have to practice formally until you have a strong enough awakeness that you could practice being awake as you go through your life. That's called walking the path. And you will be challenged. You know, if you get to the point where you are experiencing being the awareness of thinking instead of the thinker, okay, now you can walk the path. So you can't walk the path as a thinker. You can't walk the path as a personality because you don't exist. So to walk the path, you have to be real. In order to be real, you have to recognize that what is real, that is you, is the awareness, is the experiencer, not the thinker. And once you get that so that you can look at thinking instead of identify with thinking, it's very important for you to understand that's the first step. They call it kensho, right? It's very important. Until that, the only thing you can do is tell me what you think. Until that, that's all you can do. So you have to understand that there is a you that's not a thinker. There is a you that's real, that's not a thinker. It is the awareness of thinking. And when you get to the point where you can be the witness of thought, then you can practice by walking the path, meaning that as you go through your life, shit happens, right? You'll get triggered, right? You'll have circumstances that challenge you, right? And when that happens, the personality goes nuts, right? The personality freaks out, right? Because the personality wants to be in control. And as soon as the personality loses control, it freaks out. You know, what's happening? What am I going to do? So you're practicing walking the path, meaning that when that happens, you can watch it happen, right? And then if it's not something that's given your conditioning, if it's not something that's a big thing, you know, a big upset, right? Then as you walk the path, you'll notice that it's not affecting you the way it used to. Like the smaller things won't affect you the way they used to, right? But then as you're walking the path, something bigger will hit you. And then even though you're practicing walking the path and being aware of what's happening, because of the impact of what hit you, your attention goes into the thought process, right? And you're in the thought process, and between that and the emotions that are turning, right? That's it. You've now lost your contact with reality, and you're now in the identity of the person, and the person is going to do what the person does. It's going to survive, which means it's going to try and get away from anything that's threatening it, or it's going to fight with it. It's going to struggle with it or run from it, right? And if that happens in a relationship, you're going to be fighting a lot with the person. And if it's happening in a relationship where both of you are identified with the thoughts and the emotions, right, it's going to be a divorce court situation. So that's walking the path. And when you're walking the path, right, and something big happens that just you can't stay awake, right, and you go back to sleep, you go into the thinking activity, right, and then you spend some time there and you experience suffering, and then things calm down, right, and then you wake up again, right, and you say, oh shit, right. But see, here's the deal. When that happens and when you wake up again, right, you've got to recover. You've got to recover. You can't say, oh, everything I thought, everything I was practicing must have been wrong. The voice in your head will try and play that card, right? But you've got to come right back and have your feet flat on the ground and come right back to an awake state and say, wow, yeah, that humbled me. I thought I had my shit together until that shit hit, right? And when you get that handled, right? See, that's why my teacher is such a model, because the thing that he got handled was death. And there ain't going to be nothing that's going to be more challenging than your death, right? Yeah. So as you walk the path and you handle these things as he did, right? And sometimes sometimes you're successful in staying awake. Other times you go to sleep and you act out as the person and the personality, and you experience the emotions, right? Like that. But when that happens, you have to be able to return. You have to be able to be resilient. You have to be able to recover from that and come back and realize, wow, this path is challenging, right? And if you handle enough stuff on the path, you'll get to death. And if you handle death, like my teacher says, if you die before you die, because the only real death is the death of the personality, and that's an easy death, right? Because how hard can it be to die as a personality when you never actually existed? How hard is that, right? So all you really have to do is be clear that the personality never existed, and then it dies. It dies, right? And what's left? What's left is real, and what's left can actually experience life directly, right? And start to enjoy being alive as a human being, because now you've gotten down the road a bit. You're out of the dark, you're out of the lie. You're out of the misunderstanding that you have a self in this body somewhere. The thing that's interesting about this is this is literally not hard. It really isn't. I mean, if you get, when you're sitting there meditating, right, if you get the truth, which is that you're the experiencer of this body sitting there breathing, that's the teaching, that you're the experiencer of this body sitting there breathing. Now, you may have to practice, you may have to meditate for a while for that to happen, for that to take hold, right? But it's inevitable that it'll take hold because there's nothing else that could possibly happen. All there is the illusion and the reality. All there is the personality, which is generated by thought, and the truth, which is actual existing. That's all there is. So if you get clear that this isn't real, the only other possibility is this. And this is what you have to understand, because the personality will get frustrated, won't it? Personality will get frustrated. The personality will say, I can't get this. I don't understand this. I'm too restless. I can't sit still. You know, all that bullshit that'll run. That's all survival. That's the personality trying to maintain its existence, you know, by resisting what's happening when what's happening is a threat to it. And the biggest threat to the personality is the truth. The biggest threat to the personality is the truth. Why? Because if the truth is realized, the personality is out of business. If the truth is realized, then when you wake up and you start to take back your mind, when you wake up and you start to take back your mind, the first thing that'll happen is you're aware of your mind, you're aware of the mental state, right? And then that which has been dominating the mental state says, who the hell are you? What are you doing here? This is my house. That's how the identity deals with its tendency to want to own your mind. This is my house. See, and when that happens, right, and you assert, no, it's my house. The thinking you will do from here on in will be the thinking I'm using you to do, not the thinking you're using to keep me blind. See, so you take the house back. And that's part of the process of walking the path. As you see the personality trying to maintain control over you, trying to get you to say and do the things that will be consistent with maintaining its existence, as you watch that and you stop playing that game, right? And you start experiencing what you've been trying to experience as a personality, it was never possible. You start experiencing the satisfaction, the happiness, the peace, and the well-being. That's what happens. Any other questions? So take the teachings very seriously, because the teachings will take the practice of meditation and bring it to life. The teachings will take the practice of meditation and bring it to life, so that you're clear about what you're practicing in meditation, so that you don't just practice it in meditation, you practice it all the time. All the time. And then if you do it consistently and you walk the path and you have support and you have, they say in Buddhism there's 3 gems, right? The Sangha, the Dharma, and the teacher. The community of people who have the same intention, right? The truth, which is what you're learning and developing a deeper understanding about, and the teacher, whoever the teacher is. It might be me today, it might be David Radin tomorrow, it might be somebody else. The teachers are people who have experienced being awake, right? And are making themselves available to point to it for other people. Say, this way, this is the way, this is the path, this is the way, to get there. But nobody can do it for you. You have to understand that unless you make the kind of commitment necessary to stay with this process, right, then you will stay dead. Because being a personality is not alive. To be a personality, you are literally being a program that doesn't exist and cannot experience being alive, cannot experience happiness, satisfaction, well-being. You can't experience that when you're a ghost. You can't experience that when you're not something that's actually in existence. But soon as you begin to recognize what is real and what is in existence, and you start to experience that, right, then the happiness shows up. It shows up. And it's a surprise. It's a surprise because it's unlike what you thought as a person. As a person, you thought you had to pursue happiness. Yeah? But when you wake up, happiness just shows up. You don't even pursue it. Because the reality of what you are as the awareness, its nature is happy. Its nature is happy. It doesn't have to do anything to be happy. Its nature is happy. Its nature, its happiness is a function of the fact that it exists. Its nature is happiness. God is always happy. God is always peaceful. God is always satisfied, and God is always clear. And God and you are the same thing. It's not separate. It's not separate, and it's not you got to see, if you were raised in Catholicism or some of the Christian religions, you got to break out of that and realize God's not separate from you. You don't have to have faith in God. You're on the same wavelength as God. That's why he said you don't have to have faith. You don't have to learn about this. You are the teaching. You are the answer. You are God, and the God that you are is not the God that people believe in. It's the God that can be experienced directly. Experienced directly.